and yet more dovetails. Welcome back to the shop on the channel. It is at the rolling stage now, which means I've got it set up on my dollies like I did with the last big project I did, the armoire from Mara. So I can roll around the shop, get it out of the way, bring it over when I need to work on it. It's not glued together. This is just, the dovetails are just fit together now. And I've got, to keep it square, I've got some of these corner clamps mounted on the back on both sides to keep it squared up. I've decided to make a change in what I was going to do. So this was originally what I was planning to do from the previous video, is notch the wooden pieces that are going across. This would go into the dado and the dovetail would be here. And it would just slide into the cabinet like that. And then I cut the dovetails will be cut and it would finish going in. I think it's going to be easier if I just do a sliding dovetail on both sides. So in other words, I cut a sliding dovetail the depth of this, cut a dovetail, sliding dovetail on here, the socket over here, the depth of this, and then cut the dovetail on here, and the whole thing slides in one piece, not worrying about stepping it or whatever. And then the drawer shelves go in behind them in the dados, and they're going to be held in with some probably some dowels. And of course, one of the things you do in a piece like this is I put a long dado in the back and put it in, and then the back, the part that slides into the back here across the back has a dado in it, and then the divider drawer holder thingies go in those dados and hold the drawer in place. Now we must remember that there are two drawers here, so I need a divider here as well, and then places to have the drawer sit on here and over here. Now there's a little detail I'd like to show you. Let me bring the camera a little closer. Let me paint the picture for you. So this is 3/4 of an inch, and this was 3/4 of an inch. Now the crown molding is going to overlap this by a quarter of an inch, and the lip of the drawer is going to overlap by 1/4 of an inch, leaving a narrower line than if just the drawer was overlapping here, if this was still 3/4. So I've added a 1-inch piece of cherry here and on the bottom. So when you cover that with the crown molding, and you cover this with the drawer lip, it has basically the same exposure as this piece here does with just the drawer lip. So symmetry. I'm looking for symmetry. And that's why I did that. Now I'll also have to put a piece in under here so the drawer won't tip down so much when I pull one of these drawers out. So that's where I am. I have to get some pine pieces, make analogs of this, and use this wood and this to figure out how I'm actually going to jig this, cut the sliding dovetail hole. This I'm probably just going to be able to do it on the router table. But this I have to make a jig so that I can cut the dovetail slot in. I'll relieve some wood first with a straight bit and then come back and do the dovetails. I think that's how I'm going to do it. Anyhow, follow this adventure while I get all these dividers in place. And then the center one here, which is going to be dovetail top and bottom little piece, is going to go here. That's the real fussy bit. So let's go forward and butcher some wood. I did the maths, as I say in the UK, and I came up with this jig. Now it's got a piece of wood here that's going to ride in the dados. It's going to sit in there nice and snug, like that. And then it's got a cutout to run the bushing for the router into the wood, into this, so that it'll cut the dovetail as wide as I want it. And I figured that out. It's a 1/2 inch wide dovetail bit, and it's going to be a little bit more than a 1/2 inch. And the dovetail is going to be about 1/4 inch deep. And I have an example of some of my many tests right here. There's this piece of cherry, obviously, and this piece of pine. But that's hopefully the finished look on all of them. Now what I need to do, of course, is take it apart again and put one side up on the bench at a time and very carefully work my way down, cutting the dovetails and making sure they're deep enough to accept that piece of wood all the way in. Now that's fairly snug. So when I'm done, I'll put them up and show you them, but I'm not going to bang them in until I'm ready. Also, while I've got it apart and I'm doing those pieces, I'm going to cut the dados in the back behind them, behind the piece here, which is going to fit tenons from the front to backs or fore to aft pieces. The drawer is going to ride on either side. And there'll also be another piece of pine back here that sits in this dado, and there'll be a dado on that as well, so it all fits together. But it'll give it room for expansion and contraction. So let me get this apart, and we'll do some dovetail cutting, crossing the fingers, of course. Done one of the sides already. I'm going to show doing one of these dovetail slots, and then I'll proceed to finish those off. And the process is relatively simple. Come on down and take a look. Going to do this one. And first thing I need to do is score the right side of the dovetail cut, because the nature of the rotation of dovetail bits, it blows out a piece of wood here, which don't ask me how I know that. We all know that, don't we? Right. So I made one of my test pieces. I cut it off so I can slide it into the rabbet, or excuse me, into the dado, and score the front of the workpiece right there. So now hopefully that won't blow out. Then we install, whoops, piece of crap in there. Get that out of there. Install the jig, slide it back. Now I only want a certain depth of cut here. So I want to go, okay, that's my depth of cut. I want to leave a little bit overhang here so the bush will guide in straight and not come around a corner. And that's good there. And we clamp it in place. So now it's ready. Oops. Yeah, a little adjustment to make here. There we go. Some of these are not quite as perfect as they could be. The other one I did, they were just right dead on. Some of these are just a little off, and I'll have to adjust for that. So now I'm ready to make this cut. I'm using my simple little DeWalt router with a 5/8 inch collar and a 14-degree dovetailing bit set to the depth that I want, which is about almost exactly 1/4 of an inch. That can be adjusted easily with the piece that's going in here. I don't have to cut these again. I just adjust the piece that's going in there. So let's make a cut. And there you go. You'll note there's no tear out where the bit was coming in turning in this direction. I got the depth I want. This is kind of the dovetail things set up the way it's going to be eventually. I mean, this will fit in there. See, but I'll have to cut all the rest of all the cross pieces with this, and I have to use the exact same bit. Of course, that means I have to set up the router table again and do a bunch of test pieces till I get the correct setting of the bit height and the fence depth to get the dovetails exactly right. At that point, I can go ahead and cut all the rest of the pieces. Now, what I need to do is, after I finish cutting these, I have to assemble the box again, measure the distance between the edge of the end of this dovetail here and the one on the other side, get that a precise measurement, cut the pieces that are going in there to that measurement, and then cut the dovetails on them. A lot of little steps coming up here. So let me finish these and we'll move on to the next one, which I'll show you how I do things on the router table to get the dovetail on the end of the piece of wood exactly right. Again, a tight part of the shop. I got stuff here, stuff here. Anyhow, so I've got it set up, and I made the first couple of cuts in my experimental pieces, which are made from the exact parts that I'm going to use. So all the dimensions are the same. Quick and dirty jig for moving the taller pieces through the router bit, and the piece basically sits up against this piece of MDF and I hold it tightly against the fence in the MDF and I slide it forward very slowly, flip it around, and then flip it around the other end. So let's do one and mount it up. I've already got one done and it's sitting partially in the piece. So let's do one and go put it in place. Well, not completely in place, obviously. All right, so, just to give you a heads up, the dimension from the bottom of each dovetail is exactly 38.5 inches. This wound up being a little narrower for reasons I may or never go into. But this, now I can just gently, partially slide this in like that. So there's two of them in place, two of the dividers. Now, of course, there's going to be a piece here, which I'll have to dovetail in by hand, I'm sure. Let's take a closer look. Kind of hard to get some details because, you know, it's not pushed all the way in, and that comes later. I don't want to get this all the way in and then have a hard time getting them out because they are a very snug, tight fit as they should be. But what I need to do, as I said, is I need to cut dados in the back for the fore and aft, front to back parts for the drawers. So I'm going to go ahead and finish all these up, get them ready to go in, put the dados in them, and then we'll start doing the ones for the back. Slight change of process here. So I got these all done and I discovered that it would be easier to trim off part of the dovetail, sliding dovetail for fit and finish. Easier to get these parts in because it is a tight fit. I do have to adjust them a little bit for the fit. What I decided to do before I went on to do the dados and the back pieces, which are basically going to be either poplar or pine, as are the front to back pieces that are going to support the drawers will be either poplar or pine. I decided to do the real finicky bit, which was the vertical divider between the two top drawers. And same thing with this. What I've done is I've cut the dovetail even shorter, and I cut two little tiny bitty dados here. Now, how I did these, let's come in a little closer. I didn't film this, but because it's an easy procedure that most people use anyway, is this crossbar here. What I did is I marked it out very carefully and then nibbled this out on the table saw with my sliding crosscut sled. This one here, I couldn't run that through the crosscut sled, so I took this one and measured to this one, flipped this over on the workbench, and then use my trim router with a straight bit to take out the vast majority of the material, and then finish it off with a chisel and a file. And then this piece basically comes out of this stock here, and it fits right in here. And now I have to cut the dovetails for this, and I'm going to cut these, the majority of them work with a trim router, and the dovetail bit I use for everything else, the 14-degree bit, and then inlet these. And I'll probably get it as close as I can, and then do some chisel work. I don't have to go in that far with it. And what I did was I put it in like this, and then took my marking knife, nice little marking knife. I really appreciate this, and I really highly recommend these things. And I scored the pieces where the dovetails are going to go. What I've set up here is I've got the top crossmember drawer thingy and a backing plate that's the exact same height so I can run the router smoothly. I've marked the little dovetail scores that I did with a pencil. I'm going to do a little bit more here. Carefully, right where I did, so I can get the depth correct. And I can't say enough about these little, I'm going to turn it on, it's going to wash the camera a little bit. These little task lights. This is an LED task light. I've got one on the CNC. I've got one on the table, on the drill press. And since this older router doesn't have a light, this illuminates the bottom very nicely so I can see where I'm going. Once I get it, you know, the edges and everything done closely, I can move a little further back without being as careful, but I have to be very careful entering the front. It's kind of hard to get the camera down here where I'm at, but I'll just go ahead and cut these and we'll go from there. Ear protection with tunes. Now the the light's gonna wash out the camera a little bit, I think. Clear the fuzz off a little bit. Ah, my workpiece. I need my workpiece. Got my workpiece. I know my head's in the way of the camera. Okay. I've got to go a tad deeper, but I don't think I want to do that with the router right now. Let me mark that again. I'll do it with a pencil this time. I know it's going to be a fat line, but I'll do this because it's easier. All right, so I need to set the router again. I want to go a little bit deeper. Actually, I'm going to do this by hand because I really should do this by hand because it's so finicky work. Not a very good cut. I'm going to have to do some repairs to this, but okay, that's starting to fit. So I'll go ahead and finish this one and do the top one, and then we'll get some wood and make the cross pieces and 4.5 things. Well, it's in. It's not pretty. This is not glued up, of course. It could have been done a lot better, but a wise old man once told me years ago that you know you're a pro when you don't have to ask how. That doesn't mean you know everything. You'll never know everything. What that means is that you have the knowledge, the skill set, the tools to figure out how to fix the problem and make it work. And that's what that means. It's not a brag. It's just when you get to that point, oh yeah, I can fix that because I know to do A, B, and C, and I can do this. When you're first starting out, you're learning all that stuff. When you get to making stuff, big stuff, then you learn that stuff and you can fix things. Sometimes. Anyhow, on to the next step, which is secondary woods. I have the secondary woods roughed in, meaning that I've got them cut to length, and the front and back pieces are fit into the case. This is what I was talking about when saying I'm going to fasten glue pine to the back of the cherry, so I can cut the slot or dado in here, and then these will get tenons on them. Will slot into that, and then they will also slot into the dados on either side. And there's a center one which needs to be here because there's 2 drawers up here. So we're going to end this episode right here, and I'm going to glue these together. Next episode, I think I'm ready to go ahead and glue up the carcass into a nice square piece of furniture, we hope, and then we can start fitting all these parts into it. So until next time, make great things out of wood.